Yeah, making a video. Guess I'll put the light on. Yeah, it might help. Might not. Anyway, I thought I'd say something about this Puro room I was in, and just a couple of thoughts that didn't get expressed because the room just doesn't allow that to happen. Um, Stupid Vic Mackey for. Anyway, I think I was doing okay. Getting to Pyro. Trying to keep the subject kind of on what's practical and trying to get to root cause kind of things and the subject and all these subjects, feminism and racism and whatever, profiling and all this crap, all this social justice stuff, sort of. There's real psychology here, and there's a real element. The point I wanted to make is that we have kind of we're maturated by culture and by what it feeds you, and what it feeds you ends up being part of what your expectations in life are. What elements it sort of beats you up on. It's even like your history with relationships. Let's say will decide sort of what your future ones will look like in terms of what bitterness you take into them, what rewards and punishments are in your head. Those resentments and dependencies end up getting migrated into the next cause, the next battle. So we do learn from all of these things, and it's just, I think people who say it has no effect are just being silly. Video games is the example for this one. There's people who just think you can soak some kid in violence, just violent images, violent behavior, and that somehow soaking him in that pickle juice of violence isn't going to affect his psychology at all. And I think that's just nonsense. It's just such rubbish. Um, it's how we get to be who we are. Culture, in some ways, in a lot of ways, is going to define you. What parts of culture create the atmosphere that you breathed. It makes a big difference where you grow up in Harlem, you grow up in whatever, one of those Connecticut places. Makes a big difference in terms of how you're going to think you solve problems, how you react, how you interact. All of that's going to be decided by that circumstance. And I think it's silly for people to say it doesn't matter. So that's just, as a premise, that's just a silly premise. And so the point is, if let's agree that it does affect, and let's say, well, what do we do about it? So it's like I would make the argument for being a vegetarian. Oh, we can even do circumcision, because that one somehow just stirs people up. So let's just say, thought experiment wise, let's just have a couple of premises to clear the subject, just to make it clear and easy for you to make a choice here. Okay, let's just say there is no, it's a health neutral. Okay, it's health neutral plus in the sense that yes, you could eat just potato chips all day as a vegetarian, and yes, you will weigh 800 pounds and not live very long. So you can be an unhealthy vegetarian, but there's a tendency for most vegetarian foods not to be quite as toxic. So that's just a fact. But let's just ignore that. Let's just call it equal in terms of a diet, and that there was and there's none of this mystery B12 problem and all that. See, all these subjects get clouded in such bullshit. People are just so full of crap. They just say stuff and stuff that isn't true, and it's like all the vitamin deficiencies that have any meaning or reality in the circumstance of becoming a vegetarian just have to do with the fact that because we're intelligent simians, we wash our hands and wash our food because we know what germs are. But animals don't do that. So obviously through evolution, we're kind of dirty through all of that. Even some people are pretty dirty now. They say things about those Europeans over there being kind of dirty. But anyway, we didn't sanitize our existence until recently. So even just a few hundred years ago, or a couple, or even 100 years ago, you consumed a lot more B12 from the environment just because it's on everything. It's a microbe chemical, and it's on everything. So yes, if you don't sanitize your food, um, you'll consume plenty of it. So there's no such thing as a natural deficiency problem. It's just that we've changed how we live. We don't live naturally, therefore we don't. Why would evolution provide a reason for us to manufacture something that was everywhere in the environment? It would just be a waste of bodily function to make something a kind of shit that was on everything. This isn't what I want to do with this video, but it's just an example of how every one of these subjects never gets talked about rationally. There's never a fact. I mean, there's never anything. It's like he did a room. He did 5.5 hours, 6 hours actually, and it's just too much chaos. I'm saying it's purposeful. It's useful to have these arguments. Talking is the first step to change. So good, people talk, great. But yeah, there's no. It's just not structured enough. It's not cleaned. It's not. It's not purified of the fake arguments, the false notions, the bullshit, the lies, the deceptive, the manipulated rhetoric. Let's just call it. And that's all Vic has as an argument. He just says things, and if he says 4 of them fast enough, you just won't have time to fix all 4 to make your argument. So he just says 4 lies really fast, and obviously some of them are going to stick because you don't have time to fix them all. I mean, in his premises. So just to accuse, well, since you're a pedophile who's been convicted of, stealing money from old ladies, but he just does it in one, and there's no way you can defend the subject from his pointed rhetoric. Well, there's a way. You can just say, fuck you, Vic. That's a bullshit way to introduce the subject with false premises. Anyway, then you correct him. It doesn't affect him any. It doesn't change his behavior any, which is just kind of irritating. All right, so back to the vegetarian thing. So let's just say, I mean, my argument's a simple argument for all these subjects. What I'm saying is we can do better than this. And I'm saying that if you could make it, if you can engineer it, so it required no skin off of you. You had to sacrifice nothing. You're just going to choose. So your kid can be a vegetarian or your kid can be a meat eater. You're going to decide. You're manufacturing it, and it doesn't require you to change your behavior at all. You get to eat all the meat you want, live your life exactly the way you are. You're just going to decide whether your kid's going to be a vegetarian or be a meat eater by pressing a button. And I'm just saying logically, is there any reason to hit the eat meat button? If there's no health benefit, and all you're doing is torturing animals, basically, why would you want your child to be dependent on doing something that's excessively threatening to other sentient beings? I mean, even if it was just a threat, why would you put the gun in his hand? Now, if you got a kid that had a gun in its hand or no gun in its hand, which button would you push? Would you really want your kid to have a gun in his hand? Realistically, just knowing the odds are it's going to shoot him or his wife, his future wife. I mean, ideally, if I could have a kid, would I want my child, if I could just press a button and decide, to be somebody who enjoys shooting things or somebody who doesn't enjoy shooting things? His life will be just as fulfilled. He'll have a perfectly good replacement for shooting things, which will be painting portraits or something. And you can make this choice. He plays the violin or he shoots guns. Those are your 2 choices. Violin playing or shooting guns. That's it. There's no other, it has no other bigger picture implication beyond, you just press the button. You're telling me logically there's some reason why you would give your kid your vices or your dependencies or your addictions? You really haven't. Your kid drinks or your kid doesn't drink alcohol. Would you really press the button? Yes, my kid does drink alcohol. You would really do that? You really think there's something productive that comes out of it ever? There's some real good besides your dependency? There's some other way for it to be good besides you being addicted? I mean, really. I mean, I've smoked cigarettes my whole life, just about. Um, I'd never press the button make my kid a cigarette smoker. Yes, I'll give my kid a nicotine dependency. Why would I do that? So this is the root of my argument. I'm saying our culture is idiocracy. We are living so below our potential. We have iconized assholes who, kick balls. Kick balls. Um, and, we just turned buffoonery. Somebody tells a good joke. It's more important than, some sort of theory on the, mechanism of viral disease transmission or something. We're rewarding and punishing things in this inverted, back-assward way of exactly how you create a stupid society rather than a great one. And it's not about being some sort of, you don't do this kind of stuff in some Nazi, let's make rules, let's control everybody way. You do this by having a conversation, saying to other people, hey, we can do better than this. Let's voluntarily, by our own rational volition, do better than this. Rather than having it imposed on us, like we're too stupid to vote for the right thing. I mean, it's sort of tragic, that you have to have, uh, you know, maniacal evil forces are almost better dictators than people left to their own volition, because then they're just selfish assholes. They don't have any theory. And some theory is better than no theory. No clue. Some clue is better than no clue. And that's sort of what we're living by, is this sloppy chaos of artifactual addictions, the artifact of religion, spirituality. All these are just artifacts, and people are clinging to them. And they shouldn't even be introduced into the imagination of children. There shouldn't even be a concept of this stupid Sasquatch in the sky. I mean, you could press a button, Sasquatch in the sky notions or no Sasquatch notions. Yeah, you're better off without the stupid notion. Looking for imaginary characters. So I'm just saying, for most of these arguments, that's my argument, is that just as a simple argument that people in defending this crap, they're just defending their own attachment. I mean, they're meat eaters and they're just defending meat eating. There's a bunch of people arguing this stupid circumcision. It's just because they're this way and they're just defending their way, and they're not. They just wish to apply no reason whatsoever. And then their arguments and their rhetoric, just like in these rooms, becomes all this, as I tried to point out again to Piro, that there's no point in talking about in a sense, because it's always going to end up Stalin and Hitler. Stalin and Hitler. They can never have a rational conversation, because it's always going to end up being a conversation about poster child. Who's got the uglier poster child on their pamphlet of bullshit? Fuck that. So, so that's, the most I wanted to get out of this video was just to make this point that it's, our psychology is just crap, and admitting that doesn't hurt that much. Just to admit, yes, my personal psychology is full of a bunch of crap, and that if I was to bestow some qualities of inside of me on someone else, it wouldn't be that crap. It wouldn't be my addictions and The stupider parts of my psychology. There's just so many things you can talk. I mean, some asshole left a comment about men, like men want to protect women. It's in their genes. And so, you're just like, again, well, why don't you just, why don't you just pay no attention at all to reality? I mean, your own psychology. To not understand that men's desire isn't really to protect women, it's to own them, to impress them, to possess them, like Svengali. It's not really about any kind of love in any good sense. It's love in every kind of bad sense, and that it isn't that painful to admit that. Come on, and that women should be free of that kind of complete exploitation. Um, but it's complicated just because, yeah, men and women do have to sort of get along, and they're not the same. We're not the same, and how do you do this equal? Well, I've said these exact words in a video, so I don't want to be too redundant. But I mean, yeah, how do you do this thing where you have a social equity, but in the bedroom, you can still do your, man-woman thing, and that's all you're trying to do is just find some balance between, how you, and men should be able to understand it though. They really should be able to figure out that they, if they feel proud of certain accomplishments, they wouldn't want men, like if they're super butch kind of guys with their guns, and they wouldn't want iconized a bunch of traits in males, some kind of nerdy math geeks or something, getting all the gold medals and all the women are fawning over them, and that you men should be able to figure out that that would put them in an awkward position if men were represented in society half naked, posing on cars and things, that might make you feel quite resentful of the culture that was obliging you to be a tart, and rewarding, especially training children with those notions in their head that this is what your role in life is to be the best, ornament to place on top of a car. Um, so, there's so many angles to talk about this stuff, because they talk about things and they just don't pay any, it's like their arguments are just so stupid. I mean, they'll talk about the lack of influence of all these elements of our culture, and then you sit there and all you have to do is point to one TV commercial, and with one TV commercial I can point out, well, if all this psychological stuff isn't true, if all our psychology isn't fundamentally and easily manipulated and influenced, why do these TV commercials work? Why do these silly little gimmicks in TV commercials work? So I mean, it's just such bullshit, to attempt to say this isn't all really important in terms of what kind of human being you're going to raise in this dirty, filthy nest. I mean, it's a shit. It's a pile of, people are just laying eggs on shit. They're hatching young on shit, and you're telling me the bird, um, being raised in that shit isn't going to be a shitty bird, and it's going to be shit. It's going to have shit on it. Alright, I don't know, I need to, I mean, this, like I said, this just provokes a lot of conversations, but I mean, the main theme to me is that just the rhetoric sucks in these arguments. It keeps getting reused. It's like the truther argument. They'll keep, you'll make the argument, you'll point out how building 16 is irrelevant, blah, 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 because, and then they'll just bring it up next week and just do it all over again. And so, there's a point where the argument is futile in the sense that it never matures. And you still hear these same things, abortion, they've been arguing my whole life. I've been listening to this stupid argument. It's the same fucking argument over and over and over and over. And there's just no excuse for this. There's no excuse for this pretending like it hasn't been talked to death, but it's just been done wrong. Because it hasn't been talked to death in a more literal sense, with anything on the line, and in any sense, in a way where you actually prove something. Where you have a courtroom where you can't lie and you can't cheat and you can't bring in fake witnesses and you can't just say shit that's not true and you can't pretend to be a scientist and you can't pretend this and all of those kind of rules. And there's just no, we don't oblige argument to take place in an atmosphere um, that has those kind of necessary rules. I mean, courts have rules because you need rules. You got to have rules against this shit, or you're fucked. And if there's no rules in even conversation, then the conversation is fucked. And so, I keep advocating, arguing for creation of these mechanisms, and these naysayers just keep knocking anything down, any change, any any effort to fiddle with their system, and they'll just sit there and argue against it. And most of them just because they hate you. That it'll be just about the fact that they dislike me, so anything I am advocating for must be bad. It almost comes down to that in some cases, which is really, really stupid. And you but I mean, this whole argument about this threat of feminism, yeah, the threat that they're talking and saying something that you can't make an honest argument to refute it. You have to buffoon them. One of the ironies of the conversation. Well, he had a couple of the old skeptical heretic gang. I can't remember their names. The one guy ain't so bad. He's just kind of a college type, whatever his name is. But the other jerks, kind of the whatever his name was, Matt Napalm guy. That whole whatever hate tribe or whatever they had, their little club, loonies, potty mouths. Anyway, some of those idiots were in the room. Yeah, so this one guy, he sits there, calls me a sexist and a racist like Gary, or attacking games for being misogynistic is hilarious. I mean, it's okay. I don't give a shit. You want to call me a sexist and a racist based on absolutely, I would argue, no evidence. So again, he's making an argument in trial, this accusation, and he can't prove any of that because I obviously know it's crap. So, he can just keep saying shit like that and it's not true. But they say that's the tone of the argument. So you're not going anywhere from that stupid premise. If that's what you have to resort to, some preposterous exaggeration becomes the, some sort of legitimate argument technique. And what's that? That's not going to go anywhere. So I guess that's the point of what I'm saying is this whole exaggeration thing is a big problem. But it's this exaggeration just to go back to Hitler, Stalin. It's to always try to black and white a subject that doesn't, that there's no reason to. But because they I guess have the reason, which is status quo. They're defending some territory that they feel it's necessary to defend the infrastructure for it to exist. So it's like they'll, I don't even know how to come up with a good example, but they might defend religion to defend misogyny, because they know at least, religion has it built into it. So yeah, that's a good deal. If we defend religion, that'll give men more rights. Kind of an argument almost. So there's already 6 hours of this crap on that video, but I mean none of it got to the real psychology. So I guess that's the part where I find it disappointing. And I think there's a better solution than these black and white answers, which are "shut up, bitch," or I don't even know how to characterize the. I mean, there's nothing I can't really say there's anything honestly good in the defenders of cops. I mean, that's what Vic Mackey defends, the cops. He defends every element of crap culture, which is just, of status quo-ness. It seems. No, I'm making an accusation, but it seems that's always the side he's defending, is some pop culture shit, trite nonsense, um, some some whitey wannabe bullshit. That heritage wants to be true but isn't. Um, I mean, yeah. So anyway, I don't know if that's, you could just ignore the last 3.5 minutes, because it's probably a place I shouldn't go. But I'm just trying to, I shouldn't make accusations about people polarizing conversation where I'm just end up polarizing the conversation, right? That's kind of self-defeating. Um, but I guess I don't have too much sympathy for the enemies of people complaining for a better society. So I guess that's sort of what I'm basically saying, is that even if somebody is using excessive rhetoric and is fighting a cause that might be marginally important, the fact that they're arguing for an improvement, advancement, is on its face more rational than people defending what we can obviously, if you just take a tiny look at our culture, you can see it's stagnating in septic shit. It's got 500-year-old, 10,000. It's got all this old artifactal shit stuck on it, and it needs to be scraped off. Um, this isn't even close to something to be proud of. The human race isn't even close to something to be proud of. And so almost anybody raising their hand to say, oh yeah, I think humans are cool, I have to call that fail. We have humiliated our intelligence. Just fucking humiliated it. We're thousands of years into this education process. We have this complex and articulate vocabulary, and idiots are still arguing about the existence of fucking fairy tale characters. I mean, grotesquely preposterous fairy tale stories as truth? Come on. That's humiliating. And it all comes out of people living for their feelings, and having no respect for intelligence, and judging things how much they look like what they want God to look like. I mean, it's like physics has to look like a religion. I mean, that's what they've turned it into. Full of little fairies and magic dust. And you can just see that that's the way they want it to be. And that attachment to a world where humans are magical is just something they need. It isn't a recipe for intelligent human. It's a recipe for living a lie. Being a monkey, living a monkey lie. That's not a great way to say it. Not very articulate. But yeah, getting to that core thing is that they just keep wanting to pervert reality to suit their clearly anti-advanced um, bad habits. I don't even know how to put the bad habit thing in the right category, but their dependencies that were fed to them by mummy. They were spoon-fed this poison, and now they're addicted to this poison of spirituality and purpose and hope and mystery and blah 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 and all this bullshit. And it's like any other addiction. It's an addiction. It's not something valid. It's just addiction. And you don't give your kids your addictions. And as a culture, so keep making this argument that it's just a reflection of our human nature. No, you don't even know what human nature is, you idiots. This isn't human nature. This is cultural indoctrination. And what our real nature would be in the context of being an informed monkey, you end up going back to something like the Planet of the Apes and the Caesar character. They're always going to be conflicted. They're going to be sitting there saying, yes, what am I? Well, I'm an intelligent animal. But they're not one thing. It's two separate things. And you don't try to make the intelligence obedient to the animal. That's illogical. And the intelligence doesn't have any maliciousness against the animal, so it seems perfectly rational to say, well, if the intelligence has a better idea, maybe you ought to listen to it. All right. Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I don't want to talk this to death. Well, anyway, the theme that I just wanted to push was that it's all psychology. The whole way we absorb the world is all psychology. The minute your photon bounces off something, goes into your brain, your psychology is fucking with it. We don't live in reality. We live in a psychology. And you've got to concede that and that our psychology is programmed. And garbage in, garbage out. You raise kids in a garbage culture, you'll have garbage human beings. And that's why we have garbage human beings, is because we made them. Because you assholes, you, keep defending shit. You keep defending feeding kids shit. So they don't play the violin, they play with guns. Because you keep feeding them shit. And the other point I wanted to make was that you really can't have an argument about what's happening or what to fix, how to fix things, how to do anything if assholes, the feudalists, are going to keep controlling the argument. If these glib motherfucking feudal assholes who don't want to fix anything concede that they're too lazy to do a goddamn thing about anything, and they won't sacrifice a goddamn thing even over image, even just for the sake of image, they won't do it. That almost gets back to the circumcision argument, right? Because you get this insane rhetoric. You cut your dick off. Well, foreskin isn't your dick. Then they call it mutilation. All this stuff. And then they just say flatly, insanely stupid things. Like, they do it without your consent. Well, again, it can't be done any other way, unfortunately. It's one of those decisions that has to be made beforehand. It's like your kid playing the violin. It's probably not going to happen unless you're willing to buy a violin for your kid. Because the kid isn't going to come up with the money. You get it? There's certain things you have to finance. You have to put something in to get something out. It ain't going to come out free or out of nowhere, out of the vapor of the universe isn't going to make it happen. It can only happen if you have to make the decision then. And the truth is that you wouldn't want to change later in life. The choice isn't possible anymore because you've already, the house, your brain penis house has already been built. The neural connections have already been made. And so it's not going to work. You can't go back in time and undo your bad marriages or this, whatever, the things that are part of your history. So it's the kind of thing that has to be done in advance. It has to be, and it has to be done at the beginning, or not at all. So, and you're just saying, well, because it's unnatural, like every bit of nature makes perfect sense, and none of it could be fixed. So you wouldn't cure cancer because it's natural. I mean, you wouldn't cure high blood pressure if it's natural. I mean, it's stupid, natural. It's an idiotic argument. Clearly, and especially with this circumstance, I mean, clearly it's protective skin. It's not, it has nothing to do with sexual function. I mean, it has to do with protecting an appendage that's vulnerable. And they're just going to play this pretend game as if it's about something else. And it's really stupid. Especially when none of the circumcised men are complaining, and yet they're all upset for them. Which just seems insanely insincere. Don Quixote rescue mission for damsels not in distress. Huh? So, But yeah, totally irrational rhetoric. Mutilation, hacking your dick off. I mean, when you have to resort to preposterous exaggeration, you've already lost the argument. And it's like Thunderfoot in his videos, when you have to resort to mockery, you've just lost the argument, really. Come on. If I'm watching you resort to grotesque quote mining and perversion of somebody else's content, and trying to make them look like Bozo the Clown, or trying to make it, draw mustaches on them or whatever, if that's what you have to resort to, you obviously have lost the argument, right? I mean, there's no other explanation for pulling out the dirty trick bag. You only pull out the dirty trick bag when you're desperate. I mean, if you're playing a video game, right, you don't use the bag of cheats, right? You have I have some cheat codes, right? You don't resort to them until, oh fuck, I have to, right? You want to pretend like you're playing the real game, right? So if you're resorting to the cheat codes, you're lost, and that's Thunderfoot all over the place. He just every fucking video he makes is just cheat code. You can't play a straight up game. So anyway, all right, that's enough of a contextual video, I think. So anyway, I mean, but people rag on me. Look, I was having a nice kind of, yeah, me and Piro, we both talk too much, and so, but we were doing okay. I talk over him, he talks, blah blah blah. It was okay, and it doesn't get really bad until the assholes show up who can't, like I said, they can't premise an argument. They can't state a question with an acceptable premise built into it. And Hoffaday does the same kind of shit. I mean, there's just no way I'm going to accept your premise. So there's no point in making an argument with a totally unacceptable premise. So as soon as somebody says, well, why are you defending mutilation of penises? I'm not accepting your premise. Fuck you. Ask the question rational. Ask a rational question, or just fuck off, idiot. People have to be able to tell the difference. And the fact that they can't tell the difference between sincere rhetoric and cheat code, yeah, just there's more example how people are just idiots. So anyway, there's something in here that's worth it. The idea is we can fix this, but it's like people have to have a will. It's like fixing Google. It's like having a real public library style search engine. We're entitled to these things, and we just have to want it enough to say I vote for it. And it's just, you can't even get people to do that because it's going to offend Google. I mean, fuck, it's that silly. Google's God. You can't offend God. You can't claim they're not doing it. Google's not cheating. Yeah, right. I mean, it's just so ironic when I think about 12 years ago and how people were talking about Microsoft, and the fact that they can't see that Google is 10 times, 100 times worse than Microsoft in terms of gaming, just completely playing the public. It's insane. And it's this wonderful institution. It's basically serving up a different internet to every human being based on their profiling of you. They've profiled the fuck out of you, and now they're going to serve you an internet completely different than the one they're going to serve me based on that profile. And that's okay with you? Not okay with me. Not even close to okay.